What's the most painful thing you were wrongfully accused of? My neighbor's 7-year-old daughter used to come over to my house almost every weekend just to finish my snacks, but I never stopped her because I liked the company, even if she didn't say much. She was loud when she came in, quiet the rest of the time, always walked straight to the couch, pointed at the TV, and told me to put on Moana or Frozen, and I always did. Then she'd sit there with her legs folded, chewing biscuits and drinking juice while I worked or cleaned, sometimes even helping me fold towels or rinse the dishes if I was cooking, and she never asked for anything, never demanded toys or attention or anything strange, just movies and maybe an extra pack of Capri Sun if I had one in the fridge. Her name was Ada, and her mom Chinier ran a salon down the road and was barely ever home, always working late, always looking tired. And I think Ada liked it better here because it was calm and quiet and no one was asking her to sweep hair or carry stuff or sit still while clients yelled on the phone. So it became an unspoken thing. But she'd show up with crumbs on her shirt and hair and tiny braids, and I'd unlock the door and nod, and she'd walk past me like we'd lived together for years. One day I was working from home, typing emails in bed, window cracked open to let in some air, and I heard voices outside, and it was one of my nosy neighbors, Margaret, talking to Chinier, and I didn't even look up until I heard my name. Margaret asked her, "Why do you let your daughter go to that man's house all the time? Do you even know what he's capable of? What if he touches her inappropriately?" And I just sat there frozen with my hands on the keyboard. Chinier said no and defended me and told her Ada liked it there, and I had never done anything and there was no reason to worry. But Margaret kept going and told her it's always the ones you least expect, and told her I could be dangerous and I could be grooming her, and no one would know until it was too late. And I didn't move the entire time, just sat there listening to the sound of someone ruining me without ever opening my door. The next day I heard a soft knock and it was Ada holding a half-eaten biscuit and waiting to come in like nothing happened. And I didn't answer. I hid and stayed perfectly still like a coward and watched the handle twitch and then go still again. But a few seconds later, I heard her mother's voice sharp and angry, and then footsteps leaving fast, and then the sound of her being whipped with something hard and her crying, and I didn't move or open the door or even stop it. And that was the last time Ada came to my house. But after that, she started spending her time at Margaret's, and I'd see her sometimes from the window, walking over with a plastic bag in her hand, sometimes waving at the security guard, but never looking in my direction. And I told myself it was better this way, and at least she was still being watched by someone, even if it wasn't me. But then yesterday, I got home late and saw police cars everywhere, lights flashing against the buildings, neighbors outside whispering, so I asked someone what happened, and he looked around like he wasn't supposed to say it, and then told me Margaret had been arrested. I asked him, arrested for what? And he looked straight at me and told me she'd been molesting young girls in the neighborhood, even Ada. Suddenly, I couldn't move or breathe. I just stood there with my keys in my hand and my body numb. Apparently, one of the girls she'd been abusing got angry when Margaret kicked her out because Ada was there, and she told her mom everything, and the mom didn't believe it until she came back and caught Margaret in the act, naked on top of Ada. And that's when she screamed and people started running and the police were called, and I started crying because I had genuinely grown attached to Ada, and to think that she was safer with me than her own gender was a truth too bitter to swallow. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation I'd overheard between Margaret and Chinier, the way Margaret's voice had dripped with false concern while she painted me as some kind of predator. The irony was so twisted it made me sick. Here was this woman positioning herself as the neighborhood watch, the protector of children, while she was the actual monster. I sat on my couch, the same couch where Ada used to fold her little legs and watch Disney movies, and I felt empty. Not just sad, but hollow, like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that mattered. The guilt was eating me alive. Not guilt for anything I'd done, but guilt for what I hadn't done. I should have opened that door. I should have let Ada in. I should have fought back against Margaret's accusations instead of hiding like a coward. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother Marcus. "Saw the news about your neighbor on Facebook. You okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. How do you explain that you're not okay? That a 7-year-old girl you cared about was being hurt while you sat in your apartment doing nothing? That you'd been so afraid of false accusations that you'd abandon someone who needed you? I typed back, "Yeah, I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. I was 26 years old, worked as a software developer for a mid-sized tech company, lived alone in a decent apartment complex, and kept to myself. I'd always thought that was enough. I paid my bills, didn't bother anyone, helped neighbors when they asked. I thought being a good person was simple. Now I realized how naive that was. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on code when my mind was stuck on Ada. I kept thinking about her tiny hands helping me fold towels, the way she'd point at the TV without saying please, just expecting me to put on her movies because that's what we did. She'd trusted me in that simple, uncomplicated way that kids do. And I'd failed her. Around noon, there was a knock on my door. My heart jumped, thinking maybe it was Ada, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw Chinier. She looked exhausted, more tired than I'd ever seen her. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wasn't wearing makeup. I opened the door slowly. "Chinier, Marcus," she said, using my full name instead of Mark like most people did. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside to let her in. She walked straight to the couch where Ada used to sit and just stood there for a moment, staring at it. "I'm sorry," she said without turning around. "I'm so sorry. You don't have anything to be sorry for." She turned to face me, and I could see see she'd been crying. Yes, I do. I listened to that woman. I let her poison my mind against you. My daughter was safe here, and I took that away from her. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Chinier, you were protecting your daughter. Any mother would have done the same thing. No, she said, shaking her head. Any mother would have used her brain. Any mother would have looked at her happy, healthy daughter and known better. Ada loved coming here. She never came home upset or scared or acting strange. She came home calm and fed and content. But I let that woman's paranoia get to me. She sat down on the couch in the same spot where Ada used to sit. The police told me Ada had been going to Margaret's house for months. Months, Marcus. While I was working, thinking she was being watched by a kind neighbor. She couldn't finish the sentence. I sat down across from her, not sure what to say. What do you say to a mother whose child has been hurt while she was trying to keep her safe? Ada asked for you, Chinier said quietly. When they were interviewing her at the hospital, she asked if she could come watch movies at your house. The social worker said it was one of the first things she said. That broke something in me. I put my head in my hands and felt tears I'd been holding back for days finally come. I should have opened the door that day. When she knocked and I didn't answer, I was scared and selfish, and I should have opened the door. You were protecting yourself, Chinier said. Margaret made sure of that. She made you afraid to be alone with a child, afraid to help. That's what these people do. They twist good intentions into something ugly. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, I could hear normal neighborhood sounds. Cars starting, dogs barking, kids playing. It felt surreal that life was just continuing when everything felt so broken. What happens now? I asked. Ada's staying with my sister for a while. She needs therapy, needs time to heal. The trial won't be for months. Chinier wiped her eyes. Margaret's been doing this for years, they think. Other families are coming forward. It's going to be a long process. And you, she laughed bitterly. I'm trying to figure out how to live with myself, how to look at my daughter and know I handed her over to her abuser because I was worried about the wrong person. I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, but the words felt empty. We both knew the truth was more complicated than that. Margaret had played on every parent's worst fear, used society's suspicion of men around children as a weapon. But Chinier was right too. She'd known Ada was happy with me, and she'd let fear override that knowledge. Can I ask you something? I said. She nodded. Why did you let Ada come here in the first place? I mean, before Margaret said anything. Chinier was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Because you never asked for anything. Every other neighbor, they'd watch Ada and then mention how their car needed fixing, or how they were short on rent. Little hints, you know? Like watching my daughter was a favor I owed them for. But you never did that. You just let her be a kid. She looked up at me, and because she was different when she came home from here, calmer, happy. Ada's always been an anxious child. Probably my fault, working so much, the divorce, all the changes. But after spending time here, she'd come home and actually play with her toys, actually sit still long enough to eat dinner. Whatever you were doing, it was helping her. That made me think about my own childhood. I'd been an anxious kid too, always worried about money, about my parents fighting, about whether we'd have to move again. The few adults who'd shown me simple kindness without wanting anything in return had meant everything to me. My third grade teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who let me help her organize supplies during recess when I was too shy to play with the other kids. My Uncle Dave, who taught me to change oil in his garage and never made me feel stupid for not knowing things my dad should have taught me. I wasn't doing anything special, I told Chinier, just treating her like a person. That's rarer than you think. After Chinier left, I found myself walking around my apartment, seeing it differently. The couch where Ada used to sit, the kitchen counter where she'd help me rinse dishes, standing on a step stool I'd bought specifically for her height, the spot by the window where she'd stand sometimes, watching other kids play outside while eating crackers. I realized I'd been grieving, not just for what happened to Ada, but for the loss of that simple routine we'd had. Those quiet weekends when she'd knock on my door and we'd fall into our pattern, movies, snacks, small chores. It had given my weekend structure and purpose. It had made me feel useful. My phone rang. It was my mom. Marcus, honey, I saw the news about your neighborhood. Are you okay? My mom lived 3 hours away in our hometown. She called every Sunday, but this was Tuesday. I'm fine, Mom. The news said someone was arrested for child abuse. That's terrible. You make sure you're being careful. Okay, you never know who these people are. I almost laughed. Yeah, Mom, I'm being careful. Good. Your father says to tell you he finished painting the guest room. You should come visit soon. After we hung up, I thought about going home for a weekend. But the idea of explaining this whole situation to my parents felt exhausting. How do you tell your mother that you were suspected of being a child predator? How do you explain that the real predator was the woman warning everyone about you? I decided to go back to work the next day. I needed the distraction, needed to feel normal again. But normal felt impossible now. Every time I walked through the apartment complex parking lot, I was hyper-aware of the looks I got from neighbors. Some of them nodded like always, but others seemed different, wary, like they weren't sure what to believe. At work, my friend Jake asked if I was feeling better. I'd called in sick 2 days in a row, which wasn't like me. Yeah, just had a stomach bug. I lied. Good, because Rodriguez wants the authentication module finished by Friday, and you know how he gets when we're behind schedule. I threw myself into the code, grateful for something that made sense. Software was logical. If something didn't work, there was a reason, and you could fix it. Real life was messier. During lunch, I found myself Googling Margaret's case. There were news articles, court records, a whole digital trail of her arrest and charges. The details made me sick. Multiple victims, years of abuse, a pattern of targeting vulnerable children whose parents worked long hours or were going through difficult times. One article mentioned that Margaret had been active in neighborhood watch groups and PTA meetings. She'd positioned herself as a community guardian, someone parents could trust. The article quoted a child psychologist explaining how predators often insert themselves into positions of trust and authority. I closed my laptop and went for a walk around the office building. The fresh air helped, but I couldn't stop thinking about the bigger picture. How many other Margarets were out there hiding behind fake concern for children's safety? How many good people were being driven away from helping kids because of suspicion and fear? That evening, I was heating up leftover pizza when I heard voices outside my window again. Different voices this time, a man and woman I didn't recognize. I heard they arrested that woman who was babysitting all the kids. Margaret, yeah, it's awful. Makes you wonder about everyone else around here. What do you mean? Well, there was that guy she was warning people about, the one in Building C. Now I'm wondering if she was just trying to deflect attention from herself. My stomach dropped. They were talking about me. Oh my god, you're right. What if he was innocent this whole time? Or what if they're both bad? I mean, birds of a feather, right? I moved away from the window, but their voices carried. I don't know. My kids play in the courtyard sometimes. Should I be worried? I'm keeping mine inside until this all gets sorted out. I sat down heavily on my couch. Even with Margaret arrested and exposed, I was still under suspicion. The damage to my reputation might be permanent. People would always wonder, always have that seed of doubt. The next few days blurred together. Work, home, repeat. I avoided the courtyard, took the long way to my car, kept my head down when I passed neighbors. I felt like I was living in a bubble of shame that had nothing to do with anything I'd actually done. Friday afternoon, my manager Rodriguez called me into his office. Mark, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be straight with me. My heart started racing. Okay, there's been some talk around the office. Something about police activity at your apartment complex. I stared at him. What kind of talk? Nothing specific. Just people mentioning they saw news vans, police cars. You know how it is. People get curious. He leaned back in his chair. Look, I like you. You do good work, you're reliable. But if there's something going on that could affect your work or reflect badly on the company, there's nothing going on with me, I said carefully. A neighbor was arrested for child abuse. That's all. Rodriguez studied my face. And you weren't involved in any way. No, I was not involved in any way. He nodded slowly. Good. That's what I thought, but I had to ask. HR was breathing down my neck about it. As I walked back to my desk, I felt sick. Someone at work had been talking about me, speculating about my involvement in a child abuse case. Even here, where people knew me professionally, my reputation was being questioned. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove home to see my parents. I needed to be somewhere I felt normal, somewhere people knew me before all this happened. My childhood home looked smaller than I remembered, but it smelled the same. My mom's lavender air fresheners and my dad's coffee. They were happy to see me, fussing over whether I was eating enough, asking about work and when I was going to find a nice girl and settle down. You look tired, honey, my mom said over dinner. Are you getting enough sleep? Just work stress. My dad looked up from his meatloaf. You need to find a job with better work-life balance. All this computer stuff, sitting inside all day, it's not healthy. I like my job, Dad. I'm just saying, when I was your age, I worked with my hands, built things people could see and use. There's satisfaction in that. We'd had this conversation 100 times. My dad was a retired construction foreman who'd never fully understood why I chose computers over trades. But tonight, his familiar criticism felt comforting. At least he was treating me normally. After dinner, I sat on the back porch with my mom while she watered her garden. Marcus, is everything really okay? You seem different. I almost told her everything then. About Ada, about Margaret, about feeling like my life had been turned upside down. But looking at my mom's concerned face, I couldn't do it. She worried enough already. Just tired, Mom. Work's been busy. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? You always could, even when you were little. I know. That night, lying in my childhood bed, I thought about what my mom had said. I had always been able to talk to her, but not about this. How do you tell your mother that strangers suspect you of hurting children? How do you explain that kind of accusation without planting doubt in her mind too? Sunday morning, my mom made pancakes and bacon, the same breakfast she'd made every Sunday when I was growing up. My dad read the newspaper and complained about politics. Everything was normal and peaceful, and I dreaded having to go back to my real life. You should move back here, my mom said as I was loading my car. There are tech companies in the city now. You could buy a house, maybe meet someone at church. I like where I am, Mom. Do you though? You don't seem happy. I hugged her goodbye, promising to visit again soon, knowing it would probably be months before I did. The drive back to my apartment felt like traveling to a different world, one where I was viewed with suspicion instead of love. Monday at work, I noticed Jake avoided eye contact during our team meeting. Sarah from accounting, who usually chatted with me by the coffee machine, barely nodded when I said good morning. The paranoia might have been in my head, but it felt real. During lunch, I decided to be direct. I caught Jake in the break room. Hey, can I ask you something? He looked uncomfortable. Sure, people have been acting weird around me. Did someone say something about what happened at my apartment complex? Jake stared at his sandwich. Look, man, it's probably nothing. Just tell me. He sighed. Brian from IT mentioned he'd seen news coverage of some child abuse case in your neighborhood. Said he recognized your building in the background of one of the news shots. And then people started speculating. You know how it is. Someone said you lived alone. Someone else mentioned you never talk about dating anyone. And people started connecting dots that probably aren't there. My stomach clenched. What kind of dots? Nothing specific. Just, people wonder. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded calmly. Thanks for telling me. For what it's worth, I don't think there's anything to worry about. People just like to gossip. But the damage was done. Even if Jake didn't suspect me, others did. And once that kind of suspicion takes root, it's almost impossible impossible to kill. That afternoon, I made a decision that surprised me. I looked up Ada's case file online and found the name of the prosecutor handling Margaret's charges. Then I called the district attorney's office. I'd like to speak with Assistant DA Jennifer Morrison about the Margaret Chen case. Are you a witness? I'm a neighbor. I have information that might be relevant. They transferred me to Morrison's voicemail. I left a message explaining who I was and asking her to call me back. I wasn't sure what I could offer, but I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit in my apartment feeling sorry for myself while Ada and other kids were trying to heal from what Margaret had done to them. Morrison called me back the next day. Mr. Williams, thank you for reaching out. I understand you live in the same complex as the defendant and the victims. Yes, and I think I might have information about how Margaret operated, about how she targeted families and gained their trust. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Can you come in this week? We scheduled a meeting for Thursday afternoon. I took a half day off work, telling Rodriguez I had a medical appointment. It wasn't exactly a lie. This whole situation was making me sick. The DA's office was in a gray government building downtown that smelled like coffee and stress. Morrison turned out to be a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and tired eyes. She led me to a small conference room and turned on a recording device. Before we start, I want to be clear that you're not under investigation for anything. You're here voluntarily to provide information about the defendant's behavior patterns. Is that your understanding? Yes. Good. Tell me about your interactions with Margaret Chen. I started from the beginning, how Ada had started coming to my apartment, how Margaret had confronted Chenier with accusations about me, how she'd positioned herself as the neighborhood protector while isolating potential witnesses to her own behavior. Morrison took notes and asked follow-up questions. Did you ever see Margaret with other children from the complex? Yes. After Ada stopped coming to my place, I'd see her walking to Margaret's with other kids sometimes, always when their parents were at work. Did Margaret ever approach you directly? No. She talked about me, but never to me. I think she was smart enough to avoid direct confrontation with adults who might push back. Morrison nodded. That fits the pattern we're seeing. She cultivated an image as a concerned community member while targeting isolated children and overwhelmed parents. Is that more common than people want to believe? Predators often hide in plain sight, especially in positions that give them access to children and trust from parents. After the interview, Morrison walked me to the elevator. Mr. Williams, I want you to know that your testimony could be valuable at trial. You're one of the few adults who witnessed her manipulation tactics firsthand. What do you mean? Margaret's defense is going to be that she's being falsely accused by confused children and vindictive parents. Having an uninvolved adult witness testify about her patterns of behavior and manipulation could help establish her credibility issues. The elevator arrived, and as I stepped in, Morrison added, I'm sorry this happened to you too. False accusations can be devastating, even when they're eventually disproven. On the drive home, I thought about what she'd said. This was going to trial, and I might have to testify. That meant more publicity, more scrutiny, more opportunities for people to speculate about my involvement. But it also meant a chance to help Ada and the other victims get justice. That night, I called my brother Marcus. Hey man, haven't heard from you in a while. Yeah, I've been dealing with some stuff. The thing with your neighbor. I saw it made the news. I was surprised. It made the news where you are. Internet, man. Local news websites, Facebook. Some of the details were pretty messed up. Marcus lived in another state, but news traveled fast these days. If people there were reading about Margaret's case, they might recognize my neighborhood. Might even recognize my name if it came up in court testimony. Marcus, can I ask you something? Sure. If someone accused you of something you didn't do, something really bad, how would you handle it? There was a pause. This is about more than just being a neighbor, isn't it? I told him everything. About Ada, about Margaret's accusations, about the looks from neighbors and coworker, about feeling like my life had been contaminated by suspicion I'd done nothing to deserve. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. That's fucked up, he finally said. But you know what? You can't control what people think. You can only control what you do. What do you mean? I mean, you helped a kid who needed help. You did nothing wrong, and now you have a choice. You can hide from this, or you can stand up and help make sure the person who actually hurt kids gets what's coming to her. It's not that simple, isn't it? Look, people are going to think what they want to think, but at least you'll know you did the right thing. After we hung up, I sat on my couch thinking about what Marcus had said. He was right that I couldn't control other people's opinions, but I could control my actions. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done since this whole thing started. I went to the apartment complex playground during my lunch break. There were a few kids playing while their stay-at-home parents watched from benches. I didn't approach anyone or try to interact with the children. I just sat on a bench and ate my sandwich, refusing to be driven away from public spaces by unfounded suspicion. A woman I recognized from the building nodded at me cautiously. I nodded back. It wasn't friendly, but it wasn't hostile either. It was a start. Over the next few weeks, I made small efforts to reclaim my normal life. I went to the grocery store at regular times instead of avoiding peak hours. I said hello to neighbors I passed in the hallway. I stopped hiding. Some people were noticeably cold, but others seemed relieved to treat me normally again. I realized that some of the weird behavior I'd noticed might have been people feeling awkward about the situation rather than suspicious of me personally. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later when I was checking my mail and heard a familiar voice behind me. Excuse me, are you Marcus Williams? I turned around and saw a woman I didn't recognize, holding the hand of a a girl who looked about 9. Yes, I'm Lisa Henderson. This is my daughter Emma. She squeezed the girl's hand. Emma has something she wants to tell you. The girl looked up at me shyly. My mom said you used to watch Ada sometimes. I did. Ada told me you were nice. She said you let her help with chores and watch movies. Emma glanced at her mother, then back at me. I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for what? Lisa spoke up. Emma was one of Margaret's victims too. She told me that Ada talked about your place, how safe and calm it was there. It gave Emma hope that there were still good adults in the world. I felt tears starting and tried to hold them back. Ada's a special kid. She is. And so is Emma. They're both getting better, slowly. Lisa paused. I wanted you to know that not everyone in this building thinks badly of you. Some of us understand what really happened here. After they left, I stood in the mailroom for a long time, holding my electric bill and trying to process what had just happened. Ada had talked about me to another victim. Even after everything that had happened, she'd remembered feeling safe in my apartment. That weekend, I got a call from D.A. Morrison. Mr. Williams, I wanted to update you on the case. Margaret Chen has agreed to a plea bargain. What does that mean? She's pleading guilty to multiple counts of child sexual abuse in exchange for a sentence of 15 to 25 years in prison. She'll also be required to register as a sex offender and will be prohibited from unsupervised contact with minors. I felt a mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that the kids wouldn't have to testify at trial, disappointment that I wouldn't get my day in court to clear my name publicly. What about the families? Are they okay with this? The victims' families were consulted, and they agreed that avoiding a trial was in the children's best interests. These kids have been through enough. Morrison was right. Ada and Emma and the other kids deserve to move on with their lives without having to relive their trauma in a courtroom. But part of me had been looking forward to the opportunity to publicly refute Margaret's accusations against me. There is one more thing, Morrison said. As part of her plea agreement, Margaret had to provide a detailed confession. She admitted to making false accusations against you as a way to deflect suspicion from herself and isolate potential witnesses to her behavior. She admitted it. Yes, it's part of the official court record now. I can send you a copy of the relevant portions if you'd like. Yes, please. Having Margaret's confession in writing felt important, even if most people would never see it. It was official vindication, legal proof that I'd been wrongly accused. The confession arrived by email 2 days later. Reading Margaret's clinical description of her manipulation tactics was disturbing, but also validating. She deliberately targeted me because she saw me as a threat, a male adult who had regular contact with one of her potential victims. By poisoning the community against me, she'd eliminated someone who might have noticed her grooming behavior or been trusted by the children enough for them to confide in me. I printed out the confession and put it in a folder. I didn't know if I'd ever need it, but having it felt like having a weapon against any future accusations or rumors. Life began to settle into a new normal. Work relationships gradually improved as office gossip moved on to other topics. I started dating again, something I'd avoided during the worst of the suspicion. My matches on dating apps didn't need to know about the Margaret situation unless things got serious. But I couldn't forget Ada. I thought about her often, wondered how she was doing, whether she was getting the help she needed. I knew from news coverage that child abuse victims often struggled with trust in relationships for years after their trauma. The idea that Ada might grow up afraid of all adult men because of what Margaret had done to her haunted me. 6 months after Margaret's sentencing, I was surprised to find Chenier waiting by my car in the parking lot after work. Hi, Marcus. Do you have a minute? She looked better than the last time I'd seen her. Less exhausted, more put together. Of course. How are you? How's Ada? We're doing better. She's in therapy, and it's helping. She's living with my sister for now, but we're working toward her coming home. That's good to hear. Chenier fidgeted with her keys. Actually, that's why I'm here. Ada's therapist thinks it might help her healing process to have some closure with people who were important to her before the abuse started. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? She wants to see you, to talk to you. Her therapist would be there, and my sister too, just so Ada can, I don't know, reconnect with a positive memory from that time period. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me desperately wanted to see Ada, to know she was okay, but part of me was terrified. What if seeing me brought back bad memories? What if I said the wrong thing? Are you sure that's a good idea? Her therapist thinks so, and Ada asked for it specifically. She has some things she wants to tell you. We arranged to meet the following Saturday at a park halfway between our neighborhoods. Neutral territory where Ada might feel more comfortable. I was nervous all week. I kept wondering what Ada wanted to tell me, whether she blamed me for not protecting her, whether she understood why I'd stopped answering my door. Saturday morning came gray and drizzly. I got to the park early and sat on a bench, watching other families push their kids on swings and climb on playground equipment. Normal Saturday activities that felt like they belonged to a different world from the one I'd been living in. Chenier arrived with Ada, her sister Maria, and a woman I assumed was the therapist. Ada looked older, more serious than I remembered. She was wearing jeans and a pink hoodie, her hair in neat braids. She saw me and waved shyly. I waved back, feeling my throat get tight. The therapist introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Margaret. She clarified quickly. She explained that this was Ada's idea, and that she'd guide the conversation if needed. Ada has been working on expressing her feelings about different people and experiences from the time period when she was being hurt, Dr. Chen explained. She specifically asked to talk to you because you represent something positive from that time. We sat at a picnic table under a pavilion. Ada sat across from me, with Dr. Chen next to her and Chenier and Maria on either side. Hi, Ada, I said softly. Hi, Mr. Marcus. Her voice was quiet but clear. How are you doing? Better. I'm in a new school and I like my teacher, and I'm learning to play piano. That's wonderful. You always liked music. She smiled smiled a little. I remember you had a keyboard in your apartment. I wanted to touch it, but I was scared to ask. You could have asked. I would have let you play it. Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. Ada, do you want to tell Mr. Marcus what you've been thinking about? Ada nodded and looked directly at me. I wanted to say thank you for being nice to me. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. Sorry for what? For getting you in trouble. Mama told me that Margaret lady said bad things about you because of me. My heart broke. Ada, you didn't get me in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. Margaret was a bad person who hurt you and lied about me. None of that was your fault. But if I hadn't come to your house, then you would have been alone more often, and maybe Margaret would have hurt you sooner. I interrupted gently. You coming to my house wasn't the problem. Margaret was the problem. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. That's exactly right, Ada. Remember what we've talked about. You are not responsible for adult behavior, good or bad. Ada was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she looked at me again. I told the other kids that you were nice. When we were scared, I told them about watching movies at your house and how safe it felt. Chenier spoke up. The therapist says that was important for Ada's healing, having positive adult relationships to remember and talk about. I'm glad I could help, even in a small way. We talked for about 30 more minutes. Ada told me about her new school, her piano lessons, and her favorite new movies. She seemed more confident than she had as a 7-year-old, like surviving what happened to her had made her stronger in some ways. As we were getting ready to leave, Ada hugged me. It was quick and careful, but it was real. Thank you, Mr. Marcus, for letting me eat your snacks and watch movies. It was the best part of those days. Driving home, I cried harder than I had since this whole thing started, but they were good tears, cleansing tears. Ada was going to be okay. She was getting the help she needed, and she didn't blame herself or me for what had happened to her. That night, I called my brother Marcus to tell him about the meeting. How do you feel? He asked. Better. Like maybe some good can come from all this mess. Yeah, like what? I thought about it. Like maybe I understand now that protecting kids isn't just about not hurting them yourself. It's about being aware of who might hurt them, and not being afraid to speak up when something seems wrong. You thinking about getting more involved with kids somehow? Maybe. I've been looking into volunteering with the Big Brothers program. They need male mentors for boys from single-parent homes. That's cool. You'd be good at that. You think so? I know so. You've always been good with kids. Remember when I was going through my divorce and you spent all that time with Tyler? He still talks about those weekends when Uncle Marcus taught him to build websites. I had forgotten about that. During my brother's messy custody battle, I'd taken my nephew Tyler several weekends to give everyone space to sort things out. We'd worked on basic programming projects and watched superhero movies. It had felt natural, fun even. Maybe you're right. I am right. Don't let one crazy person steal something you're naturally good at. The Big Brothers program required extensive background checks, interviews, and training. The process took 3 months, but it was thorough and reassuring. They took child safety seriously while still recognizing that male mentors were crucial for boys who didn't have father figures in their lives. I was matched with a 10-year-old named Jordan, whose mom worked 2 jobs and was struggling to keep him out of trouble. Jordan was smart but angry, acting out at school and getting into fights with other kids. Our first meeting was at a bowling alley, supervised by a program coordinator. Jordan was sullen and suspicious, clearly not happy about being forced to spend time with a stranger. I don't need a babysitter, he told me, while we waited for our lane. Good, because I'm not a babysitter. I'm just a guy who likes bowling and thought you might want to learn. I already know how to bowl. Cool, want to show me? He did know how to bowl, sort of. His form was terrible, but he had good instincts. I showed him how to adjust his approach and follow through, and by the end of our session, he'd improved his score by 20 points. Not bad for a first lesson, I told him as we returned our shoes. It wasn't a lesson, I was just practicing, but I could see he was pleased with his improvement. Over the next few months, Jordan and I developed a routine. Bowling on Saturdays, homework help on Wednesday evenings, occasional outings to movies or basketball games. He gradually opened up about school, about missing his dad, about being angry all the time. Why do you hang out with me? He asked one day while we were working on his math homework. Because I like you. And because I remember being 10 and angry about things I couldn't control. You were angry when you were a kid. Very angry. My parents fought a lot. We moved around a lot. I didn't have many friends. What happened? How did you stop being angry? I thought about how to answer that. I guess I found things I was good at, and adults who believed in me, and I learned that being angry all the time was exhausting. Jordan nodded thoughtfully. Being angry is exhausting. Yeah, it is. Working with Jordan gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I was making a real difference in a kid's life, helping him navigate challenges and build confidence. It also helped me process my own experience with Ada and Margaret. One evening while Jordan was working on a science project about the solar system, he asked me about my job. You make computer programs. Yeah, mostly websites and applications for businesses. Could you teach me how to do that? Sure, if you want to learn. We started with basic HTML and CSS, building simple web pages about his interests: basketball, space, video games. Jordan had a natural aptitude for logical thinking, and he enjoyed the immediate feedback of seeing his code work. This is cool, he said, looking at a web page he'd created about his favorite NBA players. I made this whole thing myself. You did, and it looks professional. Could I get a job doing this someday? Absolutely. There are lots of different kinds of tech jobs. You could be a programmer, a web designer, a systems administrator, lots of things. Seeing Jordan discover a potential career path reminded me of my own introduction to programming in high school. My computer science teacher, Mr. Park, had seen potential in me when I was struggling in other subjects. He'd encouraged me to enter programming competitions and helped me apply for college scholarships. I realized that good mentorship was often about seeing possibilities in kids that they couldn't see in themselves yet. A year into my relationship with Jordan, his mom Angela asked to meet with me. "I wanted to thank you," she said over coffee. "Jordan's like a different kid. His grades are better, he's not fighting at school, and he actually talks to me about things now. He's a good kid. He just needed someone to listen to him. It's more than that. You've given him hope for his future. He talks about college now, about becoming a programmer. Before you, he talked about dropping out of school as soon as he was old enough." Angela's gratitude was overwhelming. I thought about how different Jordan's trajectory might have been without intervention, without someone willing to invest time in helping him find his potential. "Can I ask you something personal?" Angela said. "Sure." "Jordan mentioned that you don't have kids of your own. Why did you decide to volunteer with the program?" I thought about how to answer that. I'd never told Jordan about Ada or Margaret, but Angela deserved an honest response. "I learned that I'm good with kids, and that there are kids who need what I have to offer. It seemed like the right thing to do." "Well, I'm grateful you did. Jordan's father hasn't been in his life since he was 6, and Jordan needed a positive male role model. You filled that role beautifully." After my coffee with Angela, I reflected on how much my life had changed since the Margaret situation. What had started as the most painful experience of my adult life had led me to discover a sense of purpose I'd never had before. I was still working as a software developer, but volunteering with Jordan had become the most meaningful part of my week. I'd also started helping with the Big Brothers program's website and database management, using my technical skills to support their mission. 2 years after Margaret's sentencing, I got an unexpected call from DA Morrison. "Mr. Williams, I wanted to let you know that Margaret Chen died in prison last week." I wasn't sure how to respond. "What happened?" "Medical issue. Heart attack. According to the prison medical examiner. I thought you and the victims' families should know." After we hung up, I sat with the news for a while. I didn't feel satisfaction or relief, just a kind of emptiness. Margaret was gone, but the damage she'd done would echo for years in the lives of the children she'd hurt. I decided to call Chinier to see how she and Ada were processing the news. "We're okay," Chinier told me. "Ada's doing really well, actually. She's 13 now, in middle school, playing soccer and making friends. She's still in therapy, but she's thriving." "That's wonderful to hear. Marcus, I wanted you to know that Ada remembers you fondly. She talks sometimes about those weekends at your apartment, how safe and peaceful they were. I think those memories helped her understand that not all adults are dangerous." "I'm glad. I think about her often. She's interested in computers now, actually. She's taking a programming class at school and loves it. I think maybe watching you work on your laptop those weekends planted a seed." The idea that Ada might pursue a career in technology because of our brief time together filled me with pride. It was another reminder that positive adult relationships could have lasting impact on children's lives. That weekend I told Jordan about Ada, not the details of the abuse, but the story of a little girl who used to visit me and watch movies, and how she'd influenced my decision to become a mentor. "So I'm not your first kid you helped?" Jordan asked. "You're my first official mentee, but Ada taught me that I enjoyed spending time with kids and that I could have a positive impact." Jordan was quiet for a moment. "Do you think she's okay now?" "I think she's doing really well. She's your age, actually, and she's learning programming too." "That's cool. Maybe someday I'll meet her." "Maybe you will." As Jordan approached his 13th birthday, we began talking about transitioning our mentoring relationship. The program typically lasted 2 years, and Jordan was becoming more independent, more focused on friends and school activities. "Do I have to stop seeing you when I turn 13? He asked. "No, but our relationship might change. You're growing up, becoming your own person. You won't need a mentor the same way you did when you were 10, but we'll still be friends, always, and you can call me anytime you need advice or help with anything." Jordan's graduation from the mentoring program was bittersweet. I was proud of how much he'd grown and the confidence he'd developed, but I'd miss our regular weekly meetings. At the graduation ceremony, Jordan gave a speech about his experience in the program. "My mentor Marcus taught me that being smart isn't just about knowing things," he said, standing at a podium in front of the other kids and families. "It's about using what you know to help people and build things that matter." He also taught me that being angry is okay sometimes, but staying angry all the time just hurts yourself. Jordan's speech made me think about my own anger from the Margaret situation. I'd been furious at being falsely accused, at having my reputation damaged, at being viewed with suspicion. But staying in that anger would have prevented me from moving forward, from finding purpose in mentoring Jordan and other kids. After the ceremony, Jordan's mom Angela hugged me tightly. "Thank you for saving my son," she said. "I didn't save him. I just helped him save himself." Same thing. That summer, I was approached by the director of the Big Brothers program about taking on a more formal role. They wanted me to help train new mentors, particularly men who were nervous about working with children. "We need someone who understands the concerns and fears that potential male mentors have," she explained. "Someone who can address those concerns honestly while still encouraging good men to step up." I accepted the training role, though it meant having conversations about difficult topics. Many potential mentors had heard horror stories about false accusations, about men's reputations being destroyed by misunderstandings or malicious claims. I had to acknowledge that these fears were based in reality while also explaining why they shouldn't prevent good men from mentoring children who needed them. "The risk is real," I would tell new mentor trainees. "But the risk to children of not having positive male role models is much greater. We can take precautions, always meet in public places, follow program guidelines, maintain appropriate boundaries, but we can't let fear prevent us from helping kids who need us." I would share my own story when appropriate, though I was careful not to make it the focus. The point was that difficult experiences could be transformed transformed into opportunities to help others. During one training session, a potential mentor named David raised his hand. What if someone does make false accusations against you? How do you handle that? You follow the program protocols, you cooperate with any investigations, and you remember that the truth usually comes out eventually, I answered. But more importantly, you don't let the possibility of false accusations prevent you from doing good work. The children who need mentoring can't wait for us to figure out how to eliminate all risk from helping them. David nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. I guess I was looking for a guarantee that nothing bad would ever happen. There are no guarantees, but there are safeguards, and there are rewards that make the risks worthwhile. 3 years into my role as a mentor trainer, I received a letter that stopped me cold. It was from Ada. Dear Mr. Marcus, it began in neat handwriting. My mom gave me your address because I wanted to write to you. I'm 16 now and applying to colleges. I want to study computer science, partly because I remember watching you work on your laptop when I was little. I'm writing to thank you for being kind to me during a difficult time in my life, and to let you know that I'm doing well. I hope you are too. Sincerely, Ada. One is his I read the letter several times, then called Chinier. She wanted to write to you, Chinier explained. She's been working with her therapist on reaching out to positive people from her past. It's part of her healing process. How is she doing? Really well. She's an honor student, plays varsity soccer, has a boyfriend, a nice boy from her computer science class. She's applied to several good universities with strong tech programs. I'm so proud of her. She wanted you to know that those afternoons at your apartment represent some of her happiest memories from that period. When she was being hurt, she would remember feeling safe at your place, and it helped her believe that not all adults were dangerous. After we hung up, I sat with Ada's letter for a long time. She'd transformed her trauma into strength, her fear into determination. She was living proof that children could recover from abuse with the right support, and that positive adult relationships could make a lasting difference. I wrote back to Ada, congratulating her on her achievements, and encouraging her to pursue her interest in computer science. I also enclosed information about scholarships for women in technology, and offered to serve as a reference if she needed one. A few weeks later, I got another letter from Ada with photos from her senior prom and soccer team. She looked confident and happy, surrounded by friends who clearly cared about her. Thank you for the scholarship information, she wrote. I applied for 3 of them. I also wanted you to know that I volunteer at a local elementary school now, helping kids with homework and computer basics. Some of them remind me of myself at that age. Shy, a little scared, needing someone to be patient with them. I think about how you were patient with me, and I try to give these kids that same feeling of safety and acceptance. The idea that Ada was now mentoring younger children, passing on the kindness she'd received, filled me with a sense of completion. The cycle of trauma had been broken and replaced with a cycle of healing and help. That same year, Jordan graduated from high school with honors and received a full scholarship to study computer science at a state university. At his graduation party, he pulled me aside. I need to tell you something, he said. When I was 10, I was heading towards some bad stuff, hanging with older kids who were into drugs and stealing. If you hadn't come along when you did, I probably would have ended up in juvenile detention or worse. You would have figured it out eventually. You're too smart not to. Maybe, but maybe not in time. You changed my trajectory, Marcus. You gave me hope and skills and confidence I didn't have before. I want you to know that I'm going to pay it forward. When I'm established in my career, I'm going to mentor kids too. Jordan's words reminded me of something my brother Marcus had said years earlier, that you can't control what people think, but you can control what you do. I'd chosen to transform my pain into purpose, my experience with false accusations into a commitment to helping children who needed positive adult relationships. As Jordan headed off to college and Ada prepared for her senior year of high school, I reflected on how much my life had changed since that terrible day when I'd heard Margaret poisoning Chinier's mind against me. What had felt like the end of my reputation and peace of mind had actually been the beginning of the most meaningful work of my life. I was still working as a software developer, but my real passion was mentoring and training other mentors. I'd helped dozens of children over the years, boys and girls from single-parent homes, kids aging out of foster care, children whose parents were deployed overseas or working multiple jobs. Each child had taught me something different about resilience, about hope, about the power of believing in someone's potential even when they couldn't see it themselves. And each success story reinforced my belief that the risk of helping children far outweighed the risk of being misunderstood or falsely accused. On the 5th anniversary of Margaret's sentencing, I received a call from a local news reporter who was doing a follow-up story on the case. She wanted to interview some of the neighbors who'd been affected by Margaret's crimes. I'm particularly interested in talking to you, she said, because court records show that Margaret made false accusations against you as part of her pattern of manipulation. I agreed to the interview, though I was nervous about bringing the story back into public attention. The reporter Jennifer Walsh was thorough and sensitive in her questions. What was it like to be falsely accused of something so serious, she asked. Devastating, I answered honestly. It made me question everything about myself, about how others perceived me. It made me afraid to be around children, which was exactly what Margaret wanted. But you didn't let that fear stop you from working with children eventually. No, because I realized that Margaret's goal was to isolate potential witnesses and protectors. If I let her accusations drive me away from helping kids, she would have succeeded even from prison. What would you say to other men who might be afraid to mentor or work with children because of the possibility of false accusations? I thought carefully about my answer. I'd say that the children who need our help can't wait for us to eliminate all the risks of helping them. Yes, false accusations happen. Yes, they're damaging when when they do. But they're rare, and the damage done to children by the absence of positive male role models is much more common and much more devastating. The article ran a week later with the headline, "From False Accusations to True Purpose: How One Man Turned Personal Trauma into Community Healing." It included photos of me with Jordan at his high school graduation and quotes from other mentors in the program. The response was overwhelmingly positive. I received emails from men who said the article had inspired them to volunteer with youth programs, from parents thanking me for advocating for male mentors, and from former mentees who wanted to share their own success stories. But the most meaningful response came from Ada, now a freshman at a prestigious university studying computer science. "I saw the article online," she wrote in an email. "I wanted you to know how proud I am of you for turning something so painful into something so positive. You've helped so many children because you refused to let one bad person destroy your faith in the importance of positive adult relationships. That takes real courage." She included a photo of herself in a computer lab, working on what looked like a complex programming project. She looked confident, focused, completely at home in the technical environment. "I'm studying artificial intelligence and machine learning," she continued. "My goal is to develop technology that can help identify and prevent child abuse. I want to use my skills to protect other kids the way you protected me, even when it cost you personally." Reading Ada's email, I realized that the ripple effects of the Margaret situation were still spreading, but now they were positive ripples. Ada was channeling her experience into a career focused on child protection. Jordan was preparing to become a mentor himself. Other men were overcoming their fears to work with children who needed them. What had started as Margaret's attempt to destroy my reputation and isolate her victims had ultimately resulted in more children receiving help, more men stepping up as mentors, and more awareness about how predators operate and manipulate communities. That evening, I called my brother Marcus to share the news coverage and updates about Ada and Jordan. "Sounds like you've built something pretty amazing," he said. "It doesn't feel like I built it. It feels like it grew out of necessity." "Same thing, really. You saw what needed to be done and you did it. That's building something." "I guess so. Marcus, can I tell you something? I've watched you change over these past few years. You used to be kind of drifting, you know? Good job, nice apartment, but no real sense of purpose. Now you found your calling. It took something terrible to get you there, but you found it." He was right. Before the Margaret situation, I'd been content but not passionate about anything. I'd gone to work, come home, played video games, dated occasionally. I'd been living but not really engaged with life. Now I woke up every day knowing that my work mattered, that I was making a difference in children's lives, that I was helping other adults overcome their fears to do the same. The pain of being falsely accused had been terrible, but it had led me to discover capabilities and passions I'd never known I had. 6 months later, I was offered a position as the full-time director of mentoring programs for a regional nonprofit that worked with at-risk youth. It would mean leaving my software development career, taking a significant pay cut, and fully committing to youth work. I accepted immediately. My parents were puzzled by the career change. "You're giving up a good tech job to work with troubled kids," my dad asked during a visit home. "I'm not giving up anything, Dad. I'm gaining everything that matters." My mom was more understanding. "You seem happier than you've been in years," she observed. "More like yourself." "This is myself. I just didn't know it before." In my new role, I expanded the mentoring program to serve more children, developed new training protocols for volunteers, and created partnerships with schools and community organizations. I also began speaking at conferences about best practices in youth mentoring and the importance of male role models in children's lives. During one conference presentation, I was approached by a social worker named Patricia Huang. "Your story about being falsely accused resonated with me," she said. "I work with families where children have been removed from homes due to abuse allegations. Sometimes the allegations are false, and sometimes they're true, but the suspected perpetrator isn't the actual abuser. Your experience shows how these situations can be weaponized by actual predators." Patricia's comment made me think about the broader implications of my experience. False accusations weren't just damaging to the accused individuals, they were often tactical moves by actual abusers to deflect suspicion and isolate their victims from potential protectors. I began incorporating this perspective into my training programs, helping mentors understand not just how to protect themselves from false accusations, but how to recognize when accusations might be part of a larger pattern of manipulation and abuse. Predators often work to drive away positive adult influences from their potential victims' lives, I would explain to training groups. They create suspicion, plant seeds of doubt, isolate children from people who might notice warning signs, or be trusted with disclosures. Understanding this tactic can help us resist being manipulated away from children who need our help. This educational approach seemed to resonate with potential mentors. Instead of just learning how to avoid accusations, they were learning how to recognize and resist manipulation tactics used by actual predators. On the 10th anniversary of Ada's initial visits to my apartment, I received an invitation that brought tears to my eyes. Ada was graduating from college with highest honors in computer science, and she wanted me to attend her graduation ceremony. "You were one of the first adults to believe in my intelligence and potential," she wrote. "Having you there when I graduate would mean everything to me." The graduation was held on a beautiful spring day at a university campus filled with proud families and excited graduates. I spotted Ada easily in the crowd of cap and gown-clad students. She'd grown tall and confident, her smile bright and genuine. After the ceremony, Ada introduced me to her parents, her boyfriend, and several of her professors as the family friend who inspired my love of technology. Chenier hugged me tightly and whispered, whispered, "Thank you for never giving up on her." Ada had been accepted to graduate school to pursue a PhD in artificial intelligence with a focus on child protection applications. Her research proposal involved developing machine learning algorithms that could identify patterns in online communications that might indicate grooming or abuse. "I want to create technology that can protect kids the way you protected me," she told me over dinner with her family. "Not just by being kind and supportive, but by actively identifying and stopping predators before they can hurt children." "That's incredible, Ada. You're going to save so many kids." "We're going to save them," she corrected. "Your work inspired mine. We're both part of the same mission now." That fall, Jordan started his senior year of college with plans to join a tech company after graduation. But he'd also signed up to volunteer with a local youth program, mentoring middle school boys interested in STEM careers. "I'm not ready to be a big brother yet," he told me during one of our regular check-in calls, "but I can help kids with homework and show them some basic programming. Maybe plant some seeds like you did with me." Both Ada and Jordan had internalized the lesson that receiving help creates an obligation to help others. They were each planning to pay forward the support they'd received, creating their own ripple effects of positive change. As I reflected on the decades since Margaret's crimes had come to light, I was struck by how completely my life had transformed. What had begun as the most painful experience of my adult life had become the foundation for the most meaningful work I'd ever done. I'd helped hundreds of children through direct mentoring and thousands more through the program I'd built. I'd trained hundreds of adult volunteers to become effective mentors and advocates for children. I'd spoken at conferences, written articles, and influenced policy discussions about youth mentoring and child protection. But more than that, I'd learned that trauma and injustice don't have to be final verdicts on your life. They can be starting points for something better, catalysts for growth and purpose you never knew you were capable of. The scars from being falsely accused would always be with me. There would always be people who remembered the suspicion even if they'd forgotten the vindication. There would always be moments of hesitation when meeting new families, wondering if they'd heard rumors or had doubts. But those scars had also become sources of strength. They reminded me why my work mattered, why children needed advocates who understood both the risks and the rewards of caring for vulnerable young people. On a quiet Sunday afternoon in my office, surrounded by thank you letters from families, photos from mentee graduations, and awards from youth organizations, I thought about Margaret. She'd tried to destroy my reputation to protect her crimes, tried to isolate her victims from potential help. Instead, her actions had created a network of support for children that extended far beyond what I could have built alone. Ada was developing technology to protect kids from online predators. Jordan was mentoring younger students. Dozens of other former mentees were volunteering with youth programs, becoming teachers, social workers, and child advocates. Margaret had planted seeds of suspicion and fear, but they'd grown into gardens of hope and healing. I picked up my phone and called my brother Marcus. "Hey," he answered. "How's the world-changing business going?" "Good, really good. You sound happy." "I am happy. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing." "That's a rare thing, brother. Hold on to it." "I will." As the sun set outside my office window, I began planning the next training session for potential mentors. There were always more good people willing to help children, and always more children who needed that help. The work would continue, the ripples would keep spreading, and somewhere a 7-year-old was knocking on a door, hoping to find safety and kindness on the other side. This time, I promised myself, that door would always open.